Hello, and welcome back to Samsaraless. Now that we have understood suffering and its origin, it is time for us to explore the third part of the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha Nirodha Arya-Sakta, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. The Buddha taught that the cessation of suffering is the complete fading away and cessation of that very craving. It is its liberation, its relinquishment, its release, and its non-attachment. The Buddha emphasized once again that to end suffering, we must eliminate its root cause, which is tanha, or craving. We already discussed craving in detail during our episode on the origin of suffering. If you missed it, feel free to go back and listen to that episode. Today, we will focus entirely on Dukkha Nirodha Arya-Sakta, or the cessation of suffering. The cessation of suffering is the sublime truth that suffering can be ended, and the key to ending it is the complete eradication of all forms of craving and desire. When craving is entirely gone, suffering cannot arise. We will no longer be dragged into directions that create misery, whether through kamatanha, bhavatanha, or vibhavatanha. And naturally, if we can fully extinguish all three types of craving, that is the realization of nirvana. Simply put, when there is no craving, we are entirely free from suffering. The core essence of the cessation of suffering is letting go, refusing to cling to anything. Deep down, our desires and attachments act as heavy burdens on our minds. The moment we cut through our attachments, whether it is the desire to have, the desire to be, or the desire to force things to be exactly as we want, our minds instantly become peaceful, clear and weightless, extinguishing suffering. According to the Buddha, is not about forcefully suppressing your thoughts or blocking your emotions. Instead, it is about seeing the true nature of craving within your mind, realizing that this craving is the exact source of your pain. Once you clearly see this, your mind will naturally let it go. This cessation does not come from forcing yourself not to desire. It comes from a profound understanding of the nature of suffering and its origin. Therefore, the cessation of suffering means you are no longer controlled by craving. It is an arrival at a deep, unshakable inner peace, where nothing can ever make you suffer again. There is no more desire to bind or pressure your heart. This is the ultimate freedom of the mind. Practical everyday example. If this feels too abstract, try picturing this simple example. Imagine you own a smartphone. It works perfectly fine and meets all your daily needs. But then a brand new model is released. Suddenly, a strong desire arises within you to have it. You begin to think that if you do not get this new model, you will feel left behind, or not as cool as others. That sudden urge to get a new phone is tanha, the craving that brings suffering to your mind. Your mind loses its peace. It becomes restless, constantly looping with thoughts of how to obtain it. And if you cannot get it, you feel frustrated, annoyed, or unhappy. But if you look deeper and realize that your current phone still works perfectly fine, you will see the truth. True happiness does not come from a new phone. It comes from contentment and peace within your own mind. When you truly let go of that desire, your mind becomes light and free. There is no pressure, no desperate need to struggle to get it, because you now know that authentic joy never depends on accumulating external things. This is Nirodha, the cessation of suffering in our everyday lives. It is the simple act of letting go of our attachments to what we want to have, want to be, or want to acquire. The moment we let go, our hearts are completely liberated from the suffering caused by craving. Scientific and psychological connection. Furthermore, we can connect the cessation of suffering to modern science, specifically through psychology and neuroscience. This helps explain why letting go of attachment is incredibly beneficial to our brain and mental health. First, let us look at the brain's mechanism regarding attachment and letting go. Our brain has a built-in reward center. This center is heavily stimulated whenever we experience a strong desire to acquire or possess something, like a new phone or a specific achievement. The brain releases feel-good chemicals, primarily dopamine, which drives us to want that thing more and more, because the brain perceives it as a vital reward. But when we fail to get what we want, a deep sense of lack and disappointment follows, generating suffering. This perfectly aligns with our very first episode, where we discussed the Buddha's teaching. Not getting what one desires is suffering. This is how we can easily understand the Dhamma through the lens of science. Ending suffering means calming this reward center by letting go of craving. Scientific research proves that mindfulness and meditation practices can rewire brain activity, reducing the overstimulation of the reward center and allowing us to let go much easier. The profound peace born from this letting go is the exact Nirodha taught by the Buddha. Next, let us look at emotion management through psychology. In modern psychology, there is an approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Its core principles are beautiful reflections of Buddhist cessation. It teaches us to mindfully acknowledge and accept our feelings exactly as they are, without clinging to them or fighting them. This acceptance brings peace to the mind because we stop trying to forcefully control our internal experiences. Studies show that acceptance and letting go significantly reduce stress and anxiety. When we stop clinging to rigid demands or expectations, the suffering born from disappointment naturally vanishes. This is a practical way to apply Nirodha to modern life. In fact, scientific studies on human happiness consistently reveal that the people with the most sustainable joy are not those who possess the most wealth. Rather, they are the ones who can adapt and easily let go of their expectations. They accept that disappointment is a natural part of life and realize they do not need luxury items to feel complete. This mindset keeps their happiness stable and resilient. This scientific truth beautifully mirrors the concept of Nirodha, which guides us to let go of attachment. It proves that the cessation of suffering is not just a religious concept. It is a scientifically grounded truth, showing that letting go protects our mental health and preserves our inner peace. In summary, Nirodha is a profound reality reminding us that true suffering never comes from the world around us. It happens because our minds are manipulated by craving, attachment, and the expectation to control everything according to our wishes. When we look deeply into the root of pain, we realize it is always craving, and when we learn to step away from that craving, true peace reveals itself within us. We achieve absolute freedom, a state where nothing can ever bind or weigh down our hearts again. The cessation of suffering is never out of reach. It is found right here in understanding what causes our pain and having the courage to let go of that attachment. True freedom is never about what you own. It is about a peaceful mind that has transcended all craving and clinging. When you finally let go, your heart becomes utterly weightless, as if freed from all chains. It is a profound, deep-seated peace that you do not need to search for externally, because it has always been inside you, waiting for you to understand and open your heart to experience it. Connection to Paticca Samuppada. Cessation sequence. Now, let us dive even deeper into how the cessation of suffering connects to the law of paticca-samuppada, the dependent origination, specifically the sequence of cessation. This framework explains exactly how the ending of suffering takes place through the cessation of interconnected causes. The sequence of cessation is the ending of suffering by dismantling its causes step by step, ensuring that suffering can never be generated again. It completely reverses the mechanism of pain. By understanding the root source, we cut off the very first link in the chain. Once the initial cause is destroyed, the remaining factors gradually diminish and ultimately fade away. Dependent origination shows that suffering arises because of a chain reaction of factors, starting with avidya, or ignorance. This ignorance leads to mental fabrications, which then give rise to consciousness. Consciousness then connects to the mind and body, leading to our senses, contact, and feelings. We begin to feel a distinct sense of self, separating ourselves from the rest of the world. Eventually, this process leads to craving. Craving is triggered directly by vedana, or feeling. To put it simply, when we experience something pleasant, like seeing something beautiful that makes us happy, that pleasant feeling is a positive vedana. When we experience this pleasant feeling, craving naturally follows. And once craving arises, it leads to heavy attachment, or upadana. This attachment is what causes us to suffer, because it creates becoming, birth, and the entire mass of sorrow. If we can stay anchored in awareness and realize that this sense of self and craving are merely illusions, we can let go of the attachment. When we do, the subsequent links in the chain of dependent origination instantly break down. The suffering that used to come from attachment and mental fabrication completely dissolves. The cessation of suffering occurs the moment we stop allowing ignorance and craving to guide our minds. Seeing things clearly as they truly are destroys ignorance, freeing us completely from the wheel of dependent origination. This is how we extinguish suffering right at its absolute source. Once cut, there is no more transmission to attachment or mental fabrication. The hardships we face in life are not an inescapable trap we must blindly accept. There is a clear path to their ending, if we are willing to look deeply into the true cause. When ignorance fades and craving can no longer overpower the mind, the chains of suffering break away piece by piece. In the end, you will find an unshakable, profound peace, a joy that requires no striving or chasing, because it is entirely free from all attachment. It is an authentic, quiet freedom that requires no further searching. The path to Nirvana, this beautiful connection between the cessation of suffering and the law of dependent origination, leads us directly to Nirvana. Nirvana is the ultimate destination in Buddhism, a state of absolute freedom, entirely purified of all suffering. Nirodha means we are no longer enslaved by craving and ignorance. The Buddha taught that living beings are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, which causes them to wander endlessly through this cycle of samsara. Therefore, letting go of these fetters means extinguishing every single factor that generates pain. When suffering is completely dissolved at the mental level, this path leads straight to Nirvana. When we disrupt the flow of suffering through the sequence of cessation, we start by dismantling avidya, ignorance. When ignorance is extinguished, craving and attachment naturally vanish. There is no longer a desire to possess or cling to anything. The mind that was once overwhelmed by the rushing currents of desire is transformed into a state of absolute stillness. and ultimate freedom. This is why Samsaraless views a true understanding of the Four Noble Truths as something incredibly vital and urgent. Without understanding the Four Noble Truths, there is absolutely no way to eliminate ignorance. Once we have this knowledge, we must put it into practice to achieve true liberation. Without a correct map, it is impossible to reach our destination, or it might take us countless lifetimes of wandering to get there. Since the Buddha has already drawn the map and laid down the path for us, our only task is to simply follow it. To eliminate ignorance, we must first deeply comprehend the noble truths. Of course, intellectual understanding is just the beginning. If we understand it but never practice it, the results will not manifest. The moment we are free from ignorance, free from craving, and free from attachment, that is the reality of Nirvana. Nirvana itself transcends ordinary language, so I will not dive too deeply into defining it today. However, in the future, I look forward to creating more content about Nirvana based directly on the Buddha's words. The ones who understand Nirvana best are the Buddha and the Arahants. I believe we should pay closest attention to how the Buddha himself described it. To recap what we have learned today, to eliminate ignorance, we must see realities exactly as they are. Knowing suffering, knowing its origin, knowing its cessation, and knowing the path leading to its end. Most importantly, if we wish to end suffering, we must strike directly at craving. When we dissolve both craving and ignorance, we enter Nirvana, a state with no more desire, no attachment, and no mental fabrications. It is a peace that is perfectly complete within itself. When you break free from the chains of suffering and the conditions that cause it, you will discover a profound tranquility that depends on nothing external. It is true, absolute freedom. When the arising sequence of dependent origination is brought to an end by the cessation of ignorance and craving, Nirvana appears. Thank you for tuning in to Samsaraless today. Please remember, we still have our final episode left in this series on the Four Noble Truths that everyone should know, the path leading to the cessation of suffering. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.